Analysis: crisis unresolvable, prepare for the impending storm. High tension in Zhongnanhai, insider reveals cutoff of overseas visit database. Hong Kong confiscates pillar of remembrance as overseas Chinese march to end CCP tyranny. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Analysis: crisis unresolvable, prepare for the impending storm. The CCP's 3-year zero-COVID campaign has imposed a heavy toll on the economy, with the real estate market being the first to fall into crisis and causing local governments, which depend on land revenue, to teeter on the brink of bankruptcy. Lao Man, a self-media personality who focuses on economic issues, recently published an article analyzing the cash flow situation in the real estate industry since 2000 as reported by China's National Bureau of Statistics, concluding that the current crisis is no longer resolvable. Lao Man analyzed official data and found that the cash flow of China's real estate industry has been negative since 2000, meaning that real estate developers not only continuously reinvest profits to expand production but also continuously borrow money. As of now, the total debt of the entire Chinese real estate industry has reached 65.8 trillion yuan. According to him, the data shows that the real estate industry's last boom was in 2021, with an annual investment of 20.11 trillion yuan. In 2022, the real estate market collapsed rapidly, and ordinary people stopped buying houses, causing a sharp deterioration in the cash flow of real estate developers. More than 40 of the top 100 real estate companies defaulted on their debt, and the annual investment of real estate developers in 2022 quickly fell to 14.9 trillion yuan, a decrease of 25.9%. Such a significant decrease in investment is bound to be reflected in the completed construction area. Therefore, the completed construction area in 2022 decreased by 15% year-on-year. In the first quarter of this year, real estate developers' investment continued to decline by 9.2% year-on-year, indicating that real estate developers are still cutting costs forcefully. Lao Man said that the real estate developers' assets are the projects under construction, and even under the most optimistic circumstances, the pure income that developers can obtain after the completion and liquidation of existing projects can only reach a maximum of 54.82 trillion yuan, which is far from enough to repay the total debt of 65.82 trillion yuan. The gap is as high as 11 trillion yuan, and the only way to fill it is for the government to completely exempt real estate developers from all taxes and fees they should pay. However, Lao Man believes that this is impossible. The key problem is that house prices are still falling, and the projects under construction held by real estate developers are still depreciating, making it even more impossible for them to repay their debts. In conclusion, Lao Man stated that the situation is roughly as follows: China's real estate developers are already bankrupt as a whole, and at this stage, they are only barely delaying the outbreak of the bankruptcy wave. This is the source of China's debt storm and is fundamentally impossible to resolve. The only way to resolve it is for house prices to skyrocket again by 20%, but in the current economic downturn, can the people bear it? It is simply impossible. Therefore, everyone should prepare for the coming debt storm. Experts have long analyzed that once China's real estate market collapses, local governments will face a bankruptcy crisis, which could trigger a banking crisis, causing people's savings to disappear overnight. High tension in Zhongnanhai, insider reveals cutoff of overseas visit database. According to the Wall Street Journal, a U.S. think tank's report has caused unease among China's leadership over its impact on U.S. policy towards China. According to insiders who spoke to the Wall Street Journal, the report being referenced is a policy brief entitled "Distorting the Future: How China's Military Shapes Technological Trajectories," which was published by the Center for Security and Emerging Technology in June of last year. This report focused on how the Chinese military acquires advanced process chips designed by American companies and manufactured in Taiwan and South Korea. As per insiders, growing concerns about potential threats from the West have led to a recent effort to limit foreign access to Chinese data sources. This campaign involves the expansion of anti-espionage laws and increased pressure on foreign companies that gather information, such as auditors, management consultants, and law firms. In addition, access to Chinese databases including Shanghai-based wind information has tightened for foreign think tanks, research firms, and other non-financial entities. According to reports, in addition to strengthening scrutiny of contracts with U.S. think tanks, Wind recently cut off foreign access to specific data sets, such as data related to company registration information. Timothy Heath, a China expert at the U.S. think tank RAND, told Radio Free Asia that China's move may further damage international research on China-related issues, including sensitive security issues. He said, restricting access to academic databases located in China will force scholars around the world to rely on other sources, including foreign sources hostile to China. Therefore, the decision to restrict foreign scholars' access to Chinese academic databases may have the opposite effect and worsen the world's understanding of China. This move will also raise suspicions around the world. People will think that Beijing has a lot of concealment, so it is afraid to let the world observe the remarks of its own scholars, which will further damage trust in China and damage China's reputation. Jiang Feng, host of the Jiang Feng Moment channel, said on the news talk program of the NTD that the CCP's current anti-espionage law against overseas is an information black box, which is an absolute blockade of information. This is the main sign of the Cold War, blocking foreign access to domestic information. Jiang said, cutting off this exchange of information actually rejects the overseas, and step by step suffocates domestic enterprises, making the country more closed and dependent on the party's sole discourse channel. Jiang Feng stated that one of China's most important databases, Wind, whose economic and financial data is widely used by analysts and investors at home and abroad, has a certain degree of credibility. Now, foreign think tanks, human resources agencies, and others are finding that they simply cannot renew their subscription to Wind. For overseas investors, this is unbelievable. Who would invest large amounts of money without knowing China's market trends, policy direction, and so on? He stated that the only result of this information black box is that foreign investment gradually stops entering, and the only trend is to completely close off the country. This actually reflects the increasingly obvious harbinger of the collapse of this regime. Hong Kong confiscates Pillar of Remembrance as overseas Chinese march to end CCP tyranny. On May 7, Chinese immigrants in Los Angeles held a protest march at Ding Pancher Square in the bustling commercial district of Monterey Park in Los Angeles. The protesters raised a giant banner with a 9-meter-long pillar of remembrance and shouted slogans such as "Never forget June 4th, the CCP must pay for its dictatorship and blood debts, and end the CCP's tyranny." On May 5, the Pillar of Remembrance sculpture was confiscated by the Hong Kong government under the pretext of violating the national security law. The sculpture had originally stood on the campus of the University of Hong Kong and was removed in 2021 and stored at the Jockey Club Cadet School in Taipei. Gui Zhijian, a Danish artist and the creator of the sculpture, issued a statement condemning the Hong Kong government's action as unjust and unacceptable. Overseas democracy activists were also outraged by the confiscation, and protests were held in several cities across the United States to show support for Mr. Gui Zhijian. Jie Lijian, the executive director of the Chinese Democracy Party Youth Division, denounced the Hong Kong government's action as very shameless and absurd. Jie explained that the procession on that day had several objectives: firstly, to denounce the various human rights disasters caused by the CCP, including the Tiananmen Square massacre and others; secondly, to condemn the CCP's suppression of democracy and freedom in Hong Kong and to share the experience of the Pillar of Remembrance with people; thirdly, to expose the CCP's tyranny and lies to newly arrived Chinese immigrants in Los Angeles who were blocked from accessing the truth due to full network censorship in China. These immigrants urgently need to understand the evil nature of the CCP. The series of disasters like the Tiananmen Square massacre, the Cultural Revolution, the 3 anti-5 anti-campaigns, and the anti-rightist movement. This includes the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners and their forced organ harvesting, as well as a series of other crimes. We hope to have an exhibition that can tell and spread the truth, and inform people about the human rights disasters caused by the CCP. These recent new immigrants were all surprised and said that they couldn't find any information about the Tiananmen Square massacre on Baidu or Weibo. They only know the CCP's official propaganda, which describes that there was serious political turmoil in the spring and summer of 1989, and it passed by so easily. They had no idea that the CCP had massacred so many students, workers, and citizens at Tiananmen Square, and they were all shocked by this. Jia said many people felt fortunate that they were able to escape to the free world and witness all of this. Because the Chinese Communist Party is now too terrifying and evil, if you don't come out, you could become the next Iron Chain woman, the next Tangshan girl, or the next victim of the Pengyu case just for being a good person. He said that they will continue to hold a display march on Hollywood Boulevard, the busiest street in the world-famous tourist district, to awaken more international friends and expose the Chinese Communist Party's tyranny. It is everyone's responsibility to oppose and end the CCP, regardless of race or country. Jia stressed that the CCP's global infiltration endangers the safety and health of every person in the world. Ending the Chinese Communist Party is our common responsibility and mission. During the procession, the marching team received support from pedestrians, drivers, and people of different ethnic groups. They honked their horns to express gratitude and gave thumbs up to show their support. In addition, on May 6, Zhou Fengsuo, a leader of the June 4th student movement, and others launched a flash mob protest in Times Square, New York. Protesters held up banners with the words "Pillar of Remembrance" printed on them to protest against the CCP's dictatorship. Zhou Fengsuo spoke at the protest, stating, "The CCP police confiscated the Pillar of Remembrance as evidence of the so-called subversion of the regime. A sculpture has the power to subvert the regime, which demonstrates that the regime is evil, guilty, and murderous. They have guilty consciences, and that's what they're afraid of." Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.